Jess T. Jess T. Right here. Right now. On countryradio.uk.
Hello. Okay, so this is Jess T on countryradio.uk, and this afternoon I have the lovely Kyle Elliott from over in Nashville. Kyle, how are you doing?
Hey, Jess, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm really, really good, thank you. Really, really good. So, lots to talk about, lots of exciting stuff. But first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, Kyle. You know, let's let the listeners know who you are. We've heard about you, and lots of us have heard about you, but let's tell the listeners all about you.
So, my name's Kyle Elliott. I am a Nashville native, which is pretty rare these days, but I am a Nashville country recording artist. I've been in the game as a solo artist for about 4 years, and I like to think of myself as a little bit more of the traditional style of country, more so than the pop country that has kind of taken over the U.S. today. I'm 27 years old, and I have always loved music. It's always been a part of my life.
And so you grew up in Mount Juliet in Tennessee, is that right?
Right, that's just a suburb of Nashville. It's about 20 minutes east of town, It used to be a little tiny town when my family moved there back in the late 90s, and today it is a very, very busy suburb of Nashville. But I currently live in a town just south, about 40 minutes south of Nashville, called Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Excellent. And how do you find the music out in Nashville to start with? How do you find the city? How do you find how the music industry works out there out of interest? What's been your experience?
So originally going into it, everybody plays and everybody sings here in Nashville. Every waiter you ask, you can walk in anywhere, and I guarantee you there's a musician somewhere in a building. But there's not really a guideline. There's no right or wrong way to do it. One day I sat down and said, I want to be a country singer, and wrote a song and did some research online, put it out, and I have a good bit of music experience behind that, but so I didn't go in completely blind. But figuring out how to go do live shows, it's all through networking. It's not being the best musician walking into the biggest venue and saying, hey, I want to play here. It's finding the connections within the community and saying, hey, you know, you've got this opportunity. Do you think you could spare me an opportunity to play at it? And you sometimes get a yes and you sometimes get a no. And it's not always the best place and it's not always the worst place. So you just have to kind of figure it out as you go along.
That's a really great way to describe it. I think that pretty much describes the music industry across the whole globe, really. Yeah. I always say it is very much time and place. It's also luck. It's also knowing who you are, having your niche, and being comfortable in your own skin. And so it's interesting. So how would you describe your music, Carl? I know you're saying it's more traditional. How can you elaborate on that a little?
Sure. So I think it's a good mix. I like to tell people it's a blend of 90s and today's music. So in order to stay relevant, you do have to kind of go with the times, and that does mean a little bit of that pop country sound. But as you can probably tell, I have a deep voice, and it's not always easy to sing really high-pitched songs that most of the artists on the radio have. So artists like myself, Chris Young, Josh Turner, we have a little bit difficult time singing those poppy new songs. But I think that does, like you said, there's a niche there. And I think that really gives me the opportunity to kind of branch out in that field. And because of that, it has a really nice connection between the old style and the new style. And I would kind of place myself right along with those artists as the style of music that it is.
And they're amazing. They're wonderful artists and wonderful influences, I think. And especially that's interesting what you say about bridging the gap between traditional and new country. That's really, really interesting. And I do think there is that possibility, and people can do that. And you guys are doing that. So how did your musical journey start? What was it like growing up? How did you start to record, start to play, and start to write?
So I did not grow up in a very, at least not a commercially musical family. My parents weren't in the industry. My mom wasn't, a promoter. My dad wasn't an audio engineer, nothing crazy like that. But my mom does have a music background. She studied classical and vocal performance, which is more on the classical music side. And so I grew up singing in church. There's actually a video of me at the age of 3 singing in the church choir. And it never stopped from there. She eventually became a high school music teacher. And so I learned all my technique as far as actual vocal training, not necessarily vocal stylists or anything, but to have a healthy voice. And that's kind of where I fell in love with at least performing and singing. But always growing up in the car, we had music playing on the radio, whether it was 80s rock and roll, 90s hip hop, or especially country being in Nashville. But it was always some kind of music was going on being played. And I found out as I got older that I just loved singing. And my mom being a high school teacher, her students played music all the time on the side. They would bring their guitars in, and I thought, man, how cool would it be to be like them as a young kid? So at the age of 13, my grandfather gave me my first guitar, and I took one lesson and never went back to that guy who taught me that lesson, and eventually just learned how to play guitar off of YouTube like every other kid does these days.
Yeah, this used to be a really common factor, really interesting because, I find it crazy to play. I know Dolly did, but I find it hard. So, it's interesting to hear how many people are self-taught. That's a really, you learn your own style, I guess, and it being very specific and driven by, everything being quite specific, you find your own way, perhaps.
You do. And going into the music scene, I mean, in university, I was in a punk band, which is funny because I'm not punk at all. I mean, maybe the black t-shirt that I'm wearing right now, but that's about as far as it goes. But I love all types of music. It was an alternative kind of punk rock style. And that has a lot of different technique, especially with the guitar, but even in the writing style. And that taught me a lot. And so transitioning from that into country, which I did several years later after university and things. And I play and I write in certain ways where other songwriters will be like, what did you just do? What was that? And I'll be like, I've been doing this for years, playing back in the alternative.
Your own, that's what I mean. Just something that you do that's unique to you that someone else wouldn't necessarily have got that from being with a teacher. It's something quite bespoke.
Right. It's that personal inner
really interesting. So yeah, definitely. So from there, when you've had quite a few singles out, I've been doing my research, of course, and 2017, any more? Is that the first one? That was your debut.
Yes, and this is a lesson that I love to share with songwriters and artists out in the world. Don't do what I did. Anymore was the first country song that I ever wrote, and I released it. And I will say, take and write as many songs as you can, and then pick your favorite one and release it. It just taught me a lot of who I am as an artist and where I wanted to go. It is nice to look back though, because you can see how much I've progressed over those few years.
It's a journey. It's definitely a journey. And I think so many artists could relate to that and say that, what I put out now is not what I was putting out back then. So even in those few short amount of years, your style and your identity can change quite a bit, can't it? And it obviously has.
Absolutely. Could not agree more.
Yeah. I mean, I've listened to Sunrise. Sunrise is one of my favorites. Actually, such a good track. So you followed on with quite a few other songs. You've had Temptation, Never Break, Sunrise, and the amazing Love Hangover, which did great. Tell us about that.
Sure. So the first couple of songs, Any More, Temptation, and Never Break, those were all individual projects. And I honestly had no idea what would come of them. But when I got to Sunrise and Love Hangover, these are part of a project that I've been working on for the past year and a half. And there's 3 more songs to come in this project. And once they're all released, I'm going to re-release them as one big project. But Sunrise is such a fun song. I wrote it with a great friend, Miss Joy Beth Taylor here in Nashville. A very summer feeling, very, very upbeat feel to it. But it talks about the end of the song, how things, it was kind of that fun weekend at the beach and it had to end. And Love Hangover is kind of a direct pull directly out of that. It's that love that you have and that you wish you could go back to. And so you have a hangover of love. And that is exactly kind of the feeling that I wanted to go with that. And it tells very specific. So I think a lot of people can relate.
We can all relate to that song. Yes, that's it. Exactly. The lyrics are fantastic and they are relatable. Love Hangover. Who can't relate to that? Who hasn't been there at some point? We all have. So, it's touch issue straight away. It's all about the lyrics and it's all about the vibe, and it's got a great hook as well. Have you been gigging? Have you been? Obviously, COVID has had a huge effect on all artists. We know. But have you managed to, were you gigging prior? Did you have anything in place? And do you have anything else in place?
So it's been really unfortunate because I had a 3-week long tour in the New England area. And unfortunately that had to be canceled. And that was my first solo tour that I was going to be doing, which is very disheartening, but of course we can't just stop. I have had shows across the US. I had regular gigs here in Nashville every week, and those venues have had to close down, at least temporarily, while all of this is going on. But it's given me an opportunity to find other venues and other avenues to perform. There are a lot of smaller suburbs around the Nashville area that still have live music, but don't quite have it as often or are not known for it the way that Nashville is. And what I've found is those venues and those places respect and appreciate the music so much more than they do in Nashville because they don't get it every single day. It's not saturated everywhere you look, everywhere you turn, there's music playing. It only happens very, maybe once a week or twice a week. And so when it does happen, people show up, they pay attention, and the venues take good care of us. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to find those venues. I mean, I'm traveling 2 hours sometimes to play these shows each way. And when I get there, they're like, "Oh, we're so glad you're here. We're so excited." When I walk into a venue in Nashville, they're like, "Hey," it's a little bit different.
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. And so, where were you doing some gigs prior? Like, whereabouts were you going? I know that you had something scheduled, but what has been your history of gigs? Where did you kind of start out getting out there and performing live? Because being in a studio is obviously different to actually gigging live as well.
Absolutely.
So what kind of places were you heading out to?
So my first performance that I did as a solo country artist was actually a writer's round. And for those that don't know what those are, that's where songwriters come together and they get to perform 1 to 2 or more songs of their own. You don't get paid for that. That's all straight up just for exposure. And I played at a place here in Nashville called Douglas Corner. It's actually a pretty well-known songwriter spot. I waited in line.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I spoke about the place. It's great.
I waited because there were so many artists. I waited probably 4.5 hours on a Tuesday night to play my 2 songs at 1:30 in the morning for a crowd of maybe 12 people. And from there, I met a few people and I joined a few associations, and I learned that I needed to look here and I needed to look there and to talk to these people if you want to show and talk to these people. And you can't be afraid. You have to just go for it. And from there, I had a regular gig on 2nd Avenue. I played on Broadway. I can't tell you how many times. But I've also played in other states. I was supposed to play up in Boston for the tour and up in the Rhode Island area. And then I've played on the beaches of Florida, and I've played in the small towns of Wisconsin. I love talking about those shows because the crowds are just so much more into the shows because they don't get it all the time and they love it. So it's a lot of fun.
That's it. That's why I asked, because actually, the backstory of how it progresses. And Douglas Corner is a huge advocate for artists, and there are so many artists that I have found over the last few months that have found that has been the trigger that has then led them on and got them heard. So it's wonderful to hear that you also had that opportunity, as I know that Douglas Corner is closing permanently now, which is really, really sad to hear. But there've been some amazing artists come out of it, so that's great. And you're right, the smaller gigs, the appreciation is on a massive level. It really is. People really want to be there and really want to hear you. So tell me more about the music. So you're going to re-release some the old tracks, as you said, and you're bringing out. Is it an EP or is it going to be an album? And what kind of vibe? What have you got going on?
Sure. So the project is 6 songs, so it will be an EP, and it will be from Sunrise on for the next 6 songs, 3 of which I have yet to even announce. But the whole project is going to be called Love Hangover. I think that song really just portrays the entire project. And the main reason to re-release is I will have progressed over the course of about 2 years through this project. And as we kind of mentioned earlier, you can see the advancement of an artist in a short amount of time, especially 2 years. So when I do get ready to release the entire project again, hopefully people that hadn't heard some of the songs at the beginning that are following now can then go back and experience what the entire project was meant to be as a whole, while also getting the chance to see everything individually and not be kind of distracted by one song or another. You get to kind of focus in as I release single by single.
Yeah, and you get to see who you are as an artist by, you know, all the different I like using the word flavors because I think, you know, I think a track is a recipe. It's a recipe, you know, lots of different things go into it to make it what it is. And each song, each track will have a whole different level of spices and flavors in there. So, you know, so that's a great way to get to see who you are as an artist as well. And so the new track is coming out on the 7th of August. I know that Love Hangover did amazing. And we have, you know, I've heard this track, by the way, and it's absolutely fantastic. So I can't wait for it to come out. It's called Come On Over. And what can you tell us about the recording of the new song?
So the actual recording of it is a lot of fun. I've kind of done a compilation of all the instrumentation for my songs in one setting. So most of the tracks are done for all of the songs. The last part that we do is the vocal part. And when I go in, my producer and I work very, very hard to capture the emotion of the song, because anybody can just go in and sing something. But when you feel the music and when it comes through in the track, that I think can reach a lot of listeners and really affect them emotionally. And that's what music is. It's an emotion. And I think this song is so relatable on so many different levels. I think everybody has had the experience of wanting to be with somebody that you were with previously, or wanting to rekindle a friendship that you had previously. And all you think is, well, we can work it out now. If you just come over, we can make this work. And the reality is you can't. Most of the time you can't. And I want people to be able to relate on that level. And so I hope people do enjoy this song and find a personal connection to it.
Absolutely. We can't wait to hear it when it all comes out. I know that we're going to have a version that we're going to play out on the show today. But also a little bit more about you, Kyle. What do you do in your spare time? What do you do to have fun apart from the music? You know, I always like to get to know the person too.
Well, I like to think of myself as a jack of all trades. I love everything. It seems like my day job, when there's not a virus taking over the world, I'm a tour guide in Nashville, and the tour that I run is actually a food and drink tour. Oh. We do history, we do food, we do beverages. It's an amazing experience. I'm a history buff, so that just plays right into what I love. I'm also really big into kind of mixology. I own a bartending company as well. A lot of people don't know that. And I'm all about finding new beverages, especially here in Tennessee. We are always known for our whiskey. And it is a craft. And you put a good drink in front of me, and I love it. I just love new experiences. And of course, food. I mean, who doesn't love food? Any new restaurant you can show me, I am there. Let's go have a good time. And I do get to go to the occasional concert, which unfortunately hasn't happened much lately. But as an artist, I still enjoy a good concert experience, being a fan and not just being an artist.
Oh, absolutely. And where is your bar?
It's actually a mobile bar, so there's not a brick and mortar location, but for things like weddings or events, you hire our company and we come in and we make the drinks for you.
Oh, that's a really good plug. So get out there, everyone in Nashville, have a little check out of Carl Elliott's bar, pop-up bar. That's so cool. Everyone needs a pop-up bar, especially now. Especially now. So that's what you do on the side. So that's really interesting. So you know, hospitality, catering, foodie, really, really interesting. So that's kind of more what you do on the side too.
So a little bit more on the side. I am a big family guy, so I love spending time with the family. I really enjoy traveling. I don't get to do it as much on a freely kind of basis. That's why when I do get to travel for shows, I just love going and checking out the places around town. I'm also kind of a production nerd. I am in the process of putting out a YouTube channel, which is all about songwriting. I have no idea when that's going to be launching, considering everything else that I've got going on. But I love sharing information. I love teaching people new things. So if I can show people, you know, a successful path that I've had, maybe they can succeed too. But just sharing, I mean, interacting and networking with people, that is, I like to say that people are my business, and that's what I enjoy doing.
I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more. Carl, it's been so lovely to chat to you. Really, really has. I can't wait to hear that. Well, I've heard it, but I can't wait for everyone else to hear the single. It comes out on the 7th of August. It's Come On Over. And make sure that you have a good listen. Well, we're going to play it right today anyway, but download, stream, and buy the track, because, you know, as I always say, that's the way to help you guys. That's the way to help the artists. Obviously, it's exposure and promotion and social media, but, you know, predominantly, you guys need everyone to stream the tracks, listen, pay, you know, buy them, and just and you know, get them out there in that sense too. It's really important.
Absolutely. And, you know, if people follow and support, you know, even just to share on social media goes such a long way. But merchandise, yes, absolutely. Merchandise, music, stream, everything that you can do. We don't make much money. I have to have 2 other jobs. That's why I own a bartending business. It's because I can't necessarily survive off this right now. But the end goal is to, and hopefully people like the music enough that they are willing to back me and support me as true fans. And I can't wait to have them on board.
Well, they certainly should. They certainly should. Carl, you're an absolute star. It's been so lovely to meet you today. And I can't wait to see you again and to hear what happens with the new tracks, and obviously to hear the new EP. Very exciting.
Thank you so much, Jess.
So you take good care, and we'll speak to you soon. You're very welcome. Speak soon.
Bye-bye.
Hi, guys. It's Jess T on countryradio.uk. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and know that there will be plenty more music videos, live exclusives, and performances from country music artists across the UK and beyond.